In today's lecture, we're going to be going over chapter 49, which is the nervous system within our textbook today. In our, as I do with this lecture, we're going to be going through the book. On chapter 49's first page, you see this picture that I wanted to add within this PowerPoint. It's going to be talking about, how our billions of neurons organized to perform complex tasks, which makes the nervous system so complex and so interesting to talk about because there's so many things going on to lead to many other functions of our body that they're all started from neurons together and parts of the brain in our central nervous system and our peripheral nervous system. Now you got different lobes. The occipital lobe has its own type of thing, and the peripheral lobe has its own type of function. Frontal lobing having its own different thing. Temporal lobe, midbrain, and hindbrain. They all have their special regional, you know, functions that we'll learn about within this, which makes it so interesting about nervous systems and everything like that, such as the brain being our central nervous system, which goes on to memory formation, which is talking about a little bit more about synapse and things like that, and axons, how they connect and or weaken and things like that that help us um, influence a bunch of things with our neurons and things. Moving on to like the nervous system consisting of circuits of neurons and supporting cells. Now, by the Cambrian explosion more than 500 million years ago, there was a bunch of systems of neurons that being appeared that enabled animals to sense, their environment and respond. So this is when the beginning of nervous systems were starting and everything, and actions and stimuli reacting and cognitive abilities starting to begin. Now, the simplest animals with a nervous system usually just have interconnected neurons that are arranged in like nerve nets that's just throughout their body. But more complex systems like animals, humans, and things, we have nerves and which have axons and multiple neurons bundled together in widespread of nets throughout our body that all communicate and work together through stimuli and cognitive abilities. Nervous systems consist of circuits of neurons and supporting cells within itself. So within this, there's going to be different types of circuits and type of things. So when you're talking about bilateral symmetry in animals, they exhibit a lot of stuff uh, with clustering sensory organs in the front end of its body. So that includes a central nervous system, which consists of a brain and longitudinal like nerve cords, which in the brain was the first photo we saw today, and then a peripheral nervous system, which is our PNS, consisting of neurons carrying information into and out of the CNS. So this is our transfer portal of information and cognitive and input and stimuli being transferred, and our central nervous system is the main operator. When we're talking about the nervous system organizing, it's usually correlating to lifestyle invertebrates. So mostly in vertebrates, you'll be seeing it's composed of a brain and a spinal cord, and then the PNS, which is composed of nerves and ganglia. But the CNS being our major component system and our major operator, and our PNS being its information feeder and output thing. But like I said, every nervous system relies on lifestyle, such as other animals might not have more complex systems or less complex or even better, more complex systems. Here's a picture from the textbook. I was adding about how some animals and organisms, and vertebrates and non-vertebrates, have different types of nervous systems. So like a nerve net and the hydra on the A, C star having radial symmetry and having a nerve ring, being a different type of nervous system, and then C, the flatworm, having nervous net kind of deal, and then D, the leech, brain, different types of things. Insect on E having a brain, ventricular cord, and things like that. And then so on to F, and then D, and then like a more vertebrate type of system is H, the salamander with a brain, spinal, sensory ganglia, and things like that, spinal cord. This is like just a picture overall of what kind of nervous systems kind of look like. I'm talking about accessory thing. It's a glia. Glia cells that have numerous functions, such as nourish, support, regulation, which you'll see them in embryo and new form neurons, which help them support things and stuff like that. But astrocytes participate in making barriers like the blood-brain barrier, restricting things from more certain substances entering the brain or affecting the brain, hurting the brain. This is just an accessory thing. to neurons and the nervous system, it's neat to talk about within our chapter. Moving to the organization of vertebrates in the nervous system, we're going to be talking about our central nervous system, which develops a hollow dorsal nerve, which is our spine. As you can see in the picture in the human anatomy right there from our brain, the central nervous system creating that huge spinal cord. This cavity helps rise, narrow, like stuff for the spinal cord to go through, which ventricles the brain. Well, this cavity fills with cerebellum spinal fluid, which is supplies the CNS with nutrients and hormones that carries away waste. So it's fluctuation system and is helping us process itself like there would be like blood, for example, through our body and things like that. Now, the brain and spinal cord contain two types of matter, which is gray matter, which is going to consist of a lot of neurons, cell bodies, and dendrites, and unmyelinated axons, which you can see in our picture of our gray matter on the outside of the covering the brain, and the white matter consisting of bundles of myelinated axons. And within the picture, you can see it's a more center type of things and everything. But that's the two types of matter you're going to see consistent in the brain and the spinal cord. Continuing to its organization with some interesting stuff. Spinal cord, conveys information as I spoke about earlier and helps us do cognitive things and motor function and having a lot of things of patterns such as locomotion, which is when the spinal cord produces reflexes that we all know. Reflexes are non-voluntary motions or actions, so it's like an independent thing from the brain that we don't control. And a big thing that when we see these due to automatic stimulus, the best example here is a knee jerk reflex test. Is when somebody puts the little prod hammer to the patella tendon, and the knee jerk happens on a reflex without us doing anything. So that's what's being processed there. There's sensory neurons, motor neurons, interneurons, all working together within our nervous system. Now, moving to the peripheral nervous system, talking a little bit about that. The peripheral nervous system helps us transmit information to and from the central nervous system, regulating movement and in the internal environment. Now, also the peripheral has two different types of neurons in this. There's afferent, which transmit information to the nervous system. So it's the stuff that's taking our stimuli and things to how we're reacting to our central nervous system to process. And then there's efferent neurons, which help things move stuff away. So it's our ones that's going to help do the motor functions, which they have efforts, so that's producing actions and things. As you can see in our picture here, we're starting with internal and external stimuli going to the sensory receptors, producing afferent neurons, sending the mail of information to the central nervous system, putting it back out to our efferent neurons to process automatic nervous systems and motor systems and the control of skeletal muscles and things like that within these divisions and things, producing action. So you can see basically it's sending the information in and putting the effort back out with the efferent neurons. Now talking about a little bit more about this type of the nervous system, there's two efferent components of this, which is the motor system and autonomic nervous system, which I'll mention a little bit about the motor system so far. The motor system is going to be what carries signals to skeletal muscles for voluntary actions and movements and stuff. So like such as us walking or flexing our arms or moving our body. It's what this information is pushing the output there. Now, the automatic nervous system is what regulates smooth cardiac muscles and things like that. So that's involuntary stuff. That's such as like digestion, your heart, and things like that. That just don't think. You don't need. It's involuntary stuff. It just regulates automatically. And then in the enteric nervous system, which exerts direct control over the digestive system, as I was mentioning, other organs like the pancreas and gallbladder. So within that nervous system, there's two parts, which is sympathetic and parasympathetic divisions. Sympathetic is going to be like our adrenaline response, which is the fight or flight response, which is an interesting response because it's just the dose of energy. It's like, am I going to fight? Am I going to flight? And then our parasympathetic is our rest and digest. That's process of resting of our biological clocks and digesting food through our stomach and everything. Here's a little good picture to describe things with how the components of our nervous system, such as our parasympathetic division with the peripheral. As you can see, what falls under that is going to be constricting of the eyes, stimulating salivary glands with your mouth, constricting bronchial stuff, slowing the heart, speeding up the heart, stimulating, stuff the stomach and everything that's like that we do not realize that's going on in our body It just happens and it's promoted and it's involuntary type of things moving through the body. Which that's mostly going to be right there in the brainstem, as you can see in the picture. I'll use a highlighter right in here. This is the brainstem, and then moving to the synthetic division, which is stuff like, it's going to be our fight or flight stuff, which is all in the spinal cord. The very stuff that relates to our reflexes, sending immediate stuff back and out in our cervical, thoracic, and lumbar sections, all having its own promotional abilities, which you can see here. Dilating pupils, it's still a little bit the same, but this is just committing to, like, as I was saying, the fight or flight stuff earlier. And then this also promotes stuff down here in the, your urine systems and extra stuff. Now, the vertebrate brain's regionally specialized. Now, within this, you have your cerebellum, which controls uh, the skeletal muscle contractions and the center of learning, emotions, and memory and precipitation. So that's the part of the brain where all these things like that are going to happen. It's the regional area that has that special connectivity with neurons that just attach those abilities. And then we have the outer layer of the cerebellum, which is called the cerebellum cortex, which is a vital part of our perception, voluntary movement, and learning, things like that. So that's going to deal with a lot of stuff about of equilibrium, balance, and things like that. And then, skeletal muscles being motorized, stimuli to move them, and then even learning how to do things. Which then there's a thick band of axons called a corpus callosum, which enables the right and left cerebellum cortexes to communicate to how our right side and left side of the bodies move and things like that. The cerebellum is going to coordinate movements and balance to help us in learning and remembering motor skills. So this is where our motor skills are going to play a big factor in learning through there. So a lot of that's playing within that part. And then the hypothalamus, which contributes to the control center, including the body's thermostat and the central biological clock. So that's a lot of stuff is like cooling and heating your body. So it's going to control, like, you need to sweat to cool your body down, or try to conserve as much body heat as you can, or when you go to bed at night, it's the biological clock sleeping and getting sleep, so you don't get sleep deprived. Go more on to the regional specialized stuff. Brainstem, which is consisting of the midbrain, pons, medulla, oblongata, or the medulla, as you can also call it. But this midbrain, receives sensory information and sends it to specific areas of the brain, as we were discussing a little bit before on the last slide. Every specific regional has different processing units. So this is going to be your organizer, where it's going to send it to what stimuli is going to go to what to process what movements of efferent neurons being caused. Major function of this is the pons and medulla, which transfer information between the PNS and the brain. So that's what I was saying. Like, it's the stuff that's moving, taking the afferent to it and then bringing it back efferent. So that's going to transfer a little bit there with the PNS and the CNS. Medulla also controls several automatic functions such as breathing, heart rate, blood vessel activity, swallowing, vomiting, and digestion, things like that. There's good parts in that automatic system that we discussed earlier. It's what is automatically occurring in this part and happening. Now, moving on to another part the nervous system talks about is arousal and sleep. Now, the brainstem and the cerebellum control arousal and sleep. That's the section that controls this. Sleep is an active state for the brain. That's what's happening there, because it's controlled by reticular formations of a network formed by mainly neurons at the membrane and the pons, which causes our biological clock to work and things like that. Now, the neurons of the reticular formation control the timing of sleep periods, which I was saying, biological clock, things like that. That's what's happening right there. And then within that, there's our rapid eye movements, REMs, and vivid dreams. Those are just processing things while we're asleep and when vivid dreams that we have. Sleep is also kind of regulated, as I mentioned, biological clock, and regions of the forebrain help, regulate the intensity and duration depending on how depleted of sleep you are. As I've mentioned a lot here recently within this lecture, is biological clock regulation. Now, this is what's going to control our sleep cycles and being wakefulness and daily rhythms and daily cycles. As I mentioned, this is what controls you going to bed at night and waking up in the morning. And, this could be also based off molecular things and things like that, cellular activity. Neat things about this, your biological clock's also based off somebody's lifestyle. So if you're a nighttime shift worker, you're going to be used to, sleeping in the day and working at night, which is related to nocturnal animals. So that's a neat factor about this. As we get to the end of our discussion here today, we're talking about emotions within the nervous system. That's where in this parts of the brain, the hypothalamus, the thalamus, the hippocampus, and the amygdala, we're talking about many things, a part of the brain that produce emotion, control memory, and these structures are listed as our lymphatic systems. Now these are important because it also stores memory, emotion, and things like that, and learning and some parts of that because it's also near the base of the cerebellum. But I had a great time talking about this chapter today.